What's your I did not see that one coming story? My coworker Jake had been acting weird for months, coming in late, leaving early, taking mysterious phone calls, being secretive about his lunch plans. Everyone in the office started making jokes about him having an affair or looking for another job. I was his closest friend at work, so people kept asking me what was going on with him. I honestly had no idea, but I was starting to get worried. Jake had always been the most reliable guy I knew. Punctual, honest, straightforward. This behavior was completely out of character. One Friday, I decided to follow him during lunch. I know it sounds crazy, but I was genuinely concerned about him. Maybe he was sick, maybe he was in trouble, maybe he needed help but was too proud to ask. He drove to this rundown community center in the worst part of town. I parked across the street and watched him go inside carrying a large duffel bag. My mind immediately went to the worst places: drugs, gambling, some kind of illegal activity. I waited in my car for 2 hours. When Jake finally came out, he looked exhausted but somehow happier than I'd seen him in months. He was with a group of kids, maybe 10 or 12 years old, and they were all hugging him goodbye. That's when it clicked. I followed him back to work and cornered him in the parking lot. "Jake, what's going on? Are you tutoring kids or something?" He looked caught, like I'd discovered his deepest secret. "Please don't tell anyone at work," he said. "I've been coaching a youth boxing team. These kids come from really rough backgrounds, and boxing gives them somewhere safe to go after school instead of getting into trouble on the streets." I was confused. "Why would you hide that? That's amazing." Jake looked embarrassed. "Because I'm a 45-year-old accountant who's never thrown a punch in his life. Do you know how ridiculous that sounds?" Turns out, Jake had grown up in this same neighborhood. His dad had been absent, his mom worked 3 jobs, and he'd gotten into plenty of trouble as a teenager. The only thing that saved him was a youth boxing program that gave him structure and positive male role models. "I wanted to give back," he explained, "but I figured if people at work knew I was spending my lunch breaks teaching street kids how to fight, they'd think I was crazy or inappropriate." He'd been taking boxing lessons for 6 months before he felt confident enough to volunteer. The mysterious phone calls were from the community center coordinator. The late arrivals were because he stayed extra time when kids needed to talk. The duffel bag was full of donated boxing gear he'd been buying with his own money. "These kids don't have fathers, don't have anyone believing in them," Jake said. "Boxing teaches them discipline, respect, how to channel their anger productively. Some of them have already pulled their grades up just because they want to stay in the program." I asked if I could see him in action sometime. The next Friday, I volunteered to help. What I saw blew my mind. This quiet, mild-mannered accountant transformed into an inspiring coach. He was patient, encouraging, and surprisingly good at teaching technique. The kids absolutely adored him. They called him Coach Jake and hung on his every word. One kid told me that Jake was the only adult who'd ever told him he was proud of him. Another said Jake helped him stop getting into fights at school by teaching him better ways to handle his anger. Jake had been doing this for 8 months without telling anyone because he was afraid people would judge him or think it was weird. Instead, he was literally changing these kids' lives and being too modest to take any credit for it. I convinced him to tell our boss, who was so impressed that the company started officially sponsoring the boxing program. They bought new equipment, paid for Jake to get certified as a trainer, and even gave him flexible hours so he could coach more effectively. 3 years later, Jake's program has helped over 200 kids. Several have gotten college scholarships, others have stayed out of gangs, and many have learned to manage their emotions better. Jake was recently honored by the mayor for his community service. The man I thought might be having a midlife crisis was actually having a life-changing impact on disadvantaged youth. Sometimes the people we think we know best are capable of surprising us in the most beautiful ways. Jake still gets embarrassed when people praise him for the program. He just says, "These kids taught me more than I ever taught them." But watching him work with those kids, you can see this is what he was meant to do with his life.